Hi, thanks for tuning in today to Front Porch Conversations here at the Advent Christian Village. We're on the porch at the Copeland Community Center down by the river, and I hear crickets and other crickets and birds and some other sounds. But I wanted to introduce you to our guests. Our guests today on the porch are Craig and Vicky Carter. And I think probably you're not that unknown to most people, but we're going to learn more about you today if you're willing to visit with us and share.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Good to be here.
And Vicky, it's nice to have spend a little time with you too.
Good to be here.
Let's start with Craig. Craig, where were you born and where did you grow up?
Well, some will know that I was born in Live Oak in the old Suwannee County Hospital that's no longer there. Grew up here in Dowling Park at the Village, really on campus, down just past Carter House right on the river. So.
And we'll come back to you to
Yeah.
tell us a little more. Vicky,
Sure.
what about you?
I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but when I was 3, we moved to Mundelein, Illinois. So most of my growing up took place in Illinois, kind of the northern part of Illinois.
Well, you two had different climates to grow up in, didn't you?
Yes.
Very much
Whether
so.
so.
Very much so.
Craig, would you share a little bit about your early life here as a resident of the village?
As a resident of the village, yeah. It's kind of like, how did you get to know about the village? Well, it's obviously been part of my life from the very beginning. The village was a lot different back then. It was a lot smaller. As I said, we lived on campus down just past where Carter House is now. And we grew up just as part of the big family here in Dowling Park.
Now, the house you grew up in is no longer there.
The house I grew up in is no longer there. I took some flack from my family for that, but it had become quite a challenge as a home. We took it down about 3 or 4 years ago, and now it's just a vacant spot overlooking Highsmith Park. But growing up was a wonderful childhood. We were just part of the village. The village was our life, and the children's program was much bigger then. There were about 30 orphans, give or take, here, and so we had a lot of playmates, and we all did things together. We spent a lot of time down on the children's court, which is at the Circle of Eagle Bend now, playing and roaming the woods around the village. And I had a lot of grandparents and a lot of
I've
people
heard some of those
overseas.
grandparents say, I remember when Craig was.
Well, one of the biggest challenges was also some of the children here when I came back to work, letting people know that they changed my diaper, which was not a good thing. Yeah.
What do you think, as an individual experience, what was one of the most special experiences for you?
I think it was just the relationships of having so many people together that were concerned for you and loved you and looked out after you. Having so many playmates nearby and just the wonderful close-knit atmosphere that we had. And it's carried forward today really with the sense of community that's here. And I love when people say it's like Mayberry. And in many ways it is. It's just that hometown goodness feeling. And I really can't point to just one specific event that would have been a highlight, but just the whole atmosphere in which we grew up and took part in the village. And so, the traditions of the village have always been part of my life and are important for me for them to continue going forward.
Vicky, what about you? What was life like as a young child for you?
Well, I have 3 siblings, and so we just spent a lot of time playing around in Mundelein. And then probably when I was, I think, 4th grade, we moved a little bit further north to Libertyville, Gurnee area of Illinois. And my dad bought we had 5 acres, and he called it his hobby farm. So we kind of did a little bit of hobby farming, and we had chickens, and at one point we had 2 goats, and we had 1 or 2 beef cattle at a time, and then we bought 2 Shetland ponies, and so he just called it his little hobby farm because he still worked full time, and we did some, riding horses. We had a vegetable garden, and we had like a farm stand in the summer, and so we kind of even though we were close to urban areas, we were kind of grew up rural, running around, like I said, in the woods. We had a little apple orchard in the back, climbing trees, made a little tree fort. So it's kind of fun growing up in that area.
So moving to Dowling Park, which we'll get to later, was not totally your first rural experience.
No, it wasn't. But like I said, it was close to urban things. You didn't really have to drive quite as far to get to the mall. You know, in fact, I worked in high school. I worked at the mall for a little while, and you know, so it wasn't quite as remote as moving here. Of course, then you know we went to Aurora, and we'll get to that later. And so after graduating high school, you know, I kind of moved more into the urban areas and city life and things like that. So it was a little bit of an adjustment when we moved here.
I bet. Craig, you have siblings also?
I do. I've got a brother and 2 sisters. My oldest brother, my only brother, Chris, is in Live Oak, has Noble's Greenhouse, and we'll put a plug in. It's a beautiful spot, so people should go in and see that. My sister Carrie lives here in Dowling Park, is married to Tony Harmon, who is the head of the village grocer. And then I have a younger sister, Kay. Kay is retired, the youngest one, but the one that's retired, and she lives out in Phoenix, Arizona. And so we grew up again as a family unit, very close, continue to be very close, and as I said, we were enlarged by the big family here in Dowling Park as well.
What about your high school experiences? You went to Swanee High School?
Went to Swanee High School, was a Swanee Bulldog, enjoyed high school experience. Can't say I was the #1 top student, but I had a good time in high school, played sports, and just developed lifelong friends there as well. Mm-hmm.
And Vicky, what about you? What was high school like for you?
It was an enjoyable time. It was a fairly large high school, but had some great friends, and I was not into sports, but went to a lot of sporting events and just really enjoyed my high school years. Still keep in touch with a few of my high school friends.
With your graduations, would you tell us about where you went to college, Vicky? And
Well, when I was a senior in high school, I believe it was, that someone from Aurora College came, someone from the admissions office came and visited our high school. And at that point, a friend of mine, we decided that we wanted to go and visit the Aurora campus. And so, you know, we took a Saturday or one day and went and visited, and we both really fell in love with just the small knit community. Didn't want to go to a big state university. That just wasn't, and at that time Aurora was only about a little over an hour from where I grew up in Libertyville. And so I thought, well, it's kind of away from home, but kind of close that I can go back on the weekends. And like I said, after we visited the campus, then just decided that it was where I wanted to go to school to further my education.
did you grow up in the Advent Christian Church?
Did not, but grew up in a very loving Christian home, but I grew up as a Lutheran. And so it was important to kind of go to a school that kind of centered around, you know, had some Christian principles as part of the campus life. However, when I was a freshman in college, my parents did move to Green Bay, Wisconsin. So we can talk about that probably a little bit later. But that's how I ended up in Aurora.
Well, sometimes I've heard people say that they're going to move away when their children go to college, so they won't find them again. But you've been able to find
them. I found them.
They weren't successful. They were trying to get away, huh? Greg, what about you?
Obviously, I went to Aurora as well, and that's where we met. Aurora is affiliated with the Advent Christian denomination, and I went actually not expecting to spend all 4 years there, but at the time, both my parents had attended Aurora, and my brother and my older sister had both were still attending Aurora, and I felt I'd be missing out, as I would kind of listen in on their conversations if I didn't know what they were talking about by at least going and trying it. And so went up and fell in love with the school, and I spent all 4 years there.
And how did you and Vicky meet?
my job at Aurora was working on the maintenance crew, and I had to go into a dorm room to fix some closet doors, and there were 5 or 6 young women in that room goofing off, and or they were talking. I was goofing off.
We were stuck.
Yeah. And we got to just talking as I was fixing the doors, and thought, you know, she's kind of nice. And went home, and later that week called her up and asked her if she wanted to go to an event that we were going to, and thankfully she said yes, and the rest is history.
Well, Vicky, I always try to ask the spouses that their side of the story too.
Pretty close, yes, he did. I was in a friend's room, and he came in to fix her closet door, and he had us laughing, all of us, you know. I mean, just the personality that he has, you know. He was just cutting up, and we were having a good time, and so I didn't think much more about it when he left, but then when he called, I was like, oh yeah, that's the guy that was fixing the closet door.
Yeah.
Did you have a job on campus?
I worked in the library. Yes, I did.
And is there a lot of student employees, or were there at that time?
There were. That's a lot of their financial aid was to work, and so we both had on campus work study type positions, and so yes. So yeah, I worked maintenance. Vicky worked in the library, and got me into the library a lot more than I would have gone otherwise.
Good job.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, back to your jobs. I hear you had some jobs in the summer when you were growing up here too.
I did. I mowed grass here from again, there was different work rules back then, from my 7th grade year up through my junior year in college. So I was the lawn maintenance for that entire time in the summers. Another job I had, which was really enjoyable, is we had a resident here by the name of Willard Percy, and he was a retired land surveyor. And so I was his chain man, his lineman, his clearer of debris so that he could shoot his line for a number of the different projects here. In fact, he and I laid out the original road of Marvin Jones Boulevard from a survey perspective. We spent a lot of time across the river as the village bought some of that property there, surveying it, and so trumped the woods around the campus quite a bit, working with Mr. Percy on a survey crew. It was just he and I. And then also, after my junior year of college, I worked in the treatment cottage. Eagle Bend was a active program at that point where the village was providing care to more troubled teens at the time. And so I worked as a caseworker that summer in that program. So had a few jobs, worked some at Camp Swanee as well, more on weekends to provide service staff to the groups that were there also.
So I guess you know this place from the ground up, literally.
Pretty much. There are not many facilities that are here now that I don't recall being built. So the chapel and the original Phillips Center and the old dairy barn are about the only 3 that I don't remember them being built here that are still on campus.
And am I correct, the dairy barn's the oldest building on campus?
It is. Mm-hmm.
Except we don't have a dairy barn anymore.
That's right.
It's called the maintenance.
It's part of maintenance now. It was the old ceramic shop, and when we built the new Polk ceramic shop, maintenance kind of took it over and is using it now.
And I've heard or had people ask me, well, if your community is that old, what is your oldest building?
Yeah.
You know, they would expect to see some historical site here.
Yeah.
So now we have historical markers.
There you go.
Right?
That's right. Mm-hmm. That was one of the things that we did for the 100th anniversary. I thought that was important, because you'd have a lot of people that grew up here come back and say, where was so-and-so building? Where was the old DeLong Hall? Or where was the old Camp Tabernacle? And just to be able to put it in perspective of where it was in relation to what's here now has been I think a plus. And so I would encourage people, if they haven't done that, to get a map at the communication center and go around and see the different signs of where the different buildings used to sit. So
that would really give them a sense of history.
Exactly. Yeah.
Vicki, what about your college employment?
well, of course,
The library.
during the 4 years was at the library, but during the summer, the first summer I did go back to Libertyville, to Gurnee, Illinois, and they actually have a Six Flags. At that time, I think it was called Marriott's Great America, but it's a amusement park, and so I worked there, just in one of their food dining facilities. But then the next summer I had gone back home, well, what
Your
was
new back home.
new home and near Green Bay, a little community called Surrey, Wisconsin. And they had a factory there, and I worked in the factory. They made baby furniture, wooden baby furniture at that time. It's closed down now, but did not like factory work. So the next summer, I think I stayed in Aurora. I believe I stayed in Aurora and just worked in the library over the summer. They actually hired me to stay on during the summer. So I had a couple different job experiences.
Vicki, I would ask, what did you know what you wanted to major in when you went to college?
I did. I knew all along that I wanted to become a teacher.
And how many years have you been a teacher now?
Well, I taught in Tampa. After we got married, we were in Tampa, and I taught in Tampa for 6 years. And then when I moved here, soon after we moved here, was expecting Adam, and so I took some years off to, for the children. And then I went back when our youngest was in kindergarten, and I've been teaching in Suwannee County for 16 years. So a total of 22 years.
That's wonderful. I've heard a lot of people talk about what a great teacher you were.
Well, thank you. I do enjoy it.
Still are.
Yeah.
My children didn't grow up here, so they didn't get to have you for a teacher. Craig, when you went to college, did you have an idea what you wanted to major in?
I went to school thinking I was going to become a computer programmer. And the first class I took was basic programming, and I hated it. It was just too precise, and just dealing with a machine all day did not appeal to me. And so from there, started looking and chose the business field. And so received a degree in business administration. And then because of, even back then, before it became popular, Suwannee High School had a program where you could take college classes through the local junior college. So I had a half a year of my freshman year completed by the time I went to Aurora. So I had a lot of electives to take because all I had was just my core requirements needed. And I'm like, this is crazy. And so I decided to go ahead and work towards a second major. And so I got a degree in social work as well. Wasn't sure what I was going to do with it, but I was closer to that, and it was of interest to me at that time. Had some thoughts of coming back to Dowling Park, but really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And so my first job then ended up where? In a computer company.
And that was in Tampa?
That was in Tampa, right.
And what was the company?
It was the old GTE, General Telephone and Electronics. Worked in their IT subsidiary called GTE Data Services. Many of you obviously know of Verizon. That was a company that was born out of a merger between GTE and Bell Atlantic. And so the building I worked in then is now called Verizon Data Services, where it was GTE.
Well, I know that y'all met and that you got married, but when did that happen and where?
We obviously met and dated throughout the rest of our college time. I knew as we got started to get serious, I remember the day, and we laugh about it quite a bit, was the comment I made was, "Honey, I love you, but I'm moving south." It was one of those real cold nights, and so knew was wanting to come back south, and had an opportunity in Tampa. And so Vicky is 1 year behind me in school, but to get my second degree, I ended up having to do a full-term internship over the summer after I had graduated. So I ended up staying and working with that firm until November, and then had an opportunity here or in Tampa that was to begin in February. I showed up to begin the position, and the gentleman I was to meet with came out just sheepish and says, "Craig," he said, "I forgot, and I'm sorry, but we filed bankruptcy this morning." And so I'm like, "Okay, now what do I do?" And thankfully, a resident of the village, it's a very good friend, Al Alton, knew someone in Tampa that was able to get me a temporary position down there with GTE. And the more I researched, the more I found that was one of the best companies to work for down there. So I stayed with it and was hired full time, and ended up staying for 6 years till we moved back here.
And where was the wedding?
It was actually here. So then after I graduated, I moved down. Well, we didn't get engaged before I moved down, because my thought was, if I don't like it in the South, I'm moving back north. So I moved to Tampa, and was able, through a cousin of Craig's, was able to get a teaching job right away in Tampa. And so I started teaching, and we, of course, were still dating at that time. And after I lived down there the first winter, I was like, oh my gosh, it never gets cold in Tampa. I mean, relatively. And we don't have to shovel snow, and we don't have to scrape off the ice off of our windshields. You know, I think I can really enjoy, you know, this kind of climate. And of course, you know, loved Craig. And so we ended up getting engaged that year in February, and then the wedding was in November. And because we were attending the Advent Christian Church down in Tampa, but not long enough to feel like it was our home church. So we decided that we would get married here at the village. And so we got married in November of 1987, and we got married at the chapel. Yeah.
It was actually the last, before the new church was built, was kind of the last ceremony there, other than morning worships. So it was kind of neat to do that. But yeah.
And we went on our honeymoon, and then for just part of the week, from Sunday till Wednesday, and it was the week of Thanksgiving. And on Thanksgiving Day, we flew up to Green Bay and had a reception on that Friday at my parents' hometown, and had a family reception, because a lot of my family couldn't, you know, come down, and a lot of them live in that area. So it was kind of nice. So we had a reception up there that Friday.
And so you, Craig, got to experience some winter too then, right? But you already had it at Aurora.
Aurora, we had a pretty good taste of it, but it's quite a bit colder even in northern Wisconsin. But we laugh with our family, because we end up going back each year at Christmas. This was actually only the second Christmas season that we have not spent at least a few days in northern Wisconsin. It was the first year because we were there in Thanksgiving, and then her sister was getting married in February. So we did not go up that Christmas, and that would have been the Christmas of '87. And we had gone up every single year until this past year with COVID at Christmas time. And so we laughed that we've got it wrong, because they usually end up down here in August, and we're up there at Christmas, and we're a little backwards there.
Yeah, they come down the hottest time of the year, and we go up there the coldest time of the year. But it was fun for our children to be able to experience the snow and the ice.
I bet.
Every year.
And I like to laugh, though. One of the funniest experiences for me was we were getting ready to go to church, and we had the three, and Lindsay, our youngest, was just a toddler. And so you started bundling them all up, and you get the first one bundled, the second one bundled, and you just start getting the third one bundled, and the oldest of course says, "I've got to go to the bathroom." And so Vicky's there going, "Oh, I couldn't do with this all the time." And I'm like, "Good job, boys." So I knew we were safe and down apart.
Well, tell us a little bit about your children, Vicky.
Okay. We have 3 children. Adam is our oldest. They were all born in Gainesville, here in, the area. So Adam was born in August of '93, and he is, I believe, 20. That makes him 27. And then Timothy is Do you want to hear what they're
Yes.
doing now? And okay, so Adam is married to Carson, and they are living in Middleburg, near Jacksonville, and he's an accountant. And he has 2 wonderful children, which makes us grandparents. He has a 3-year-old, Andrew, and he has a 9-month-old, Charlotte. And of course, we just adore them. They're just precious. And then our second is Timothy, and he actually is in medical school right now. And so he is starting his 3rd year at medical school, and he's working mainly at the hospital in Thomasville. And he just got married May 22nd, so he's a newlywed. So his wife is from this area as well. And but now they're both living in Thomasville. And then our youngest is Lindsay, and she's a senior, and she's going to college at Valdosta State and hoping to graduate in December.
And what is her major?
She has a math major, and so she's not sure exactly what she's going to do with that math major, but you know, she's thinking she could always teach or do some other aspect of math. So she's not really sure exactly what she'll end up doing after graduation, but we feel like a math major is pretty important at this time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Grandpa, do you want to share any grandpa stories?
I just will say that I always wondered what all the big fuss was until you have your own. And I laugh because I can remember back when we had our first Adam. He was a toddler. He was 2 years old, and we were over at my parents' house, and he was getting into something. And I just corrected him, like, Adam, don't do that, behave. And my father looked at me and says, Craig, take it easy on that boy. And I looked at him, I'm like, what? You'd have got me a whole lot worse than that. And I didn't understand that until now that I have my own. And you treat them quite a bit different, and love when they come over. And he sits on my lap, and we take lawnmower rides around the yard and through the woods, and just the best thing there is.
I would have to agree. and they go home at some point.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
After camping with 4 children under 6 last week, I thought, whoa.
Yeah. Yes.
It's a lot of work.
Only 2 of them were my grandchildren. Craig, would you share what you think is the vision you have for the village at this point?
The village is certainly a unique and special place, and a ministry that is dear and near to my heart, with our family being involved with it for so long. As we go forward, first and foremost, I want to make sure that we retain that focus upon ministry, focus upon community, that it is a place where neighbor looks after neighbor, and that the love of Christ is expressed in all that we do. As we look to the future, there's obviously great challenges and always will be. One of the things that we really need to focus on is we need to grow. We need to have a larger base in order to help cover the cost of operating such a complex and unique organization. And so I think you'll see, as we look to the future, as we have over the past few years, is looking at options and opportunities for us to grow and expand. We have a pretty good set of services that are here, but to have others here to help us to cover those expenses would be helpful. So we'll be looking at continuing with our 105th campaign, and look to begin a new assisted living facility in the very near future. Likewise, excited that we're getting close to beginning the new manufactured housing community.
Would you share with our viewers where that's going to be located?
That will be located, it'll be created in pods, so that we're not going to have a huge expansion at one time. But as you would follow Marvin Jones Boulevard, which crosses 136 in front of Good Samaritan Center and the Copeland Clinic, where it has the circle, we'll extend that road on into the woods there, and begin the manufactured housing community there, and really follow it along. It'll be behind where the Bixler Gardens cemetery is, with a couple 100-foot buffer, and follow around. And the road will actually come out on the south end of the campus on 136, or on Dowling Park Drive, down at the end of Taylor Commons area there. And so we'll have a crossroad that will come out where the back road to Park of the Pines is located, and intersect with it the new road that's going in. And that's kind of the area where the assisted living facility will be as well. Oh. So those are kind of the more immediate plans. One of the things we want to do before we begin that manufactured housing community is, we intentionally slowed things down as far as admissions during the pandemic and through COVID. So we want to get back to where we were with some of our occupancy and some of our current facilities before we embark on something new. And so it slowed us down some, but that'll be the newer projects that we'll begin. Then we really need to focus on some of our infrastructure. We need to pave some roads and do some other things that just make sure that we're maintaining what we have here. And so that's going to be an emphasis of us for the next couple of years. There are challenges, as I said. Minimum wage going up will impact us significantly over the next 4 or 5 years. So we're going to have to do some things to shore up our financial soundness, not financial soundness, but just our ability to continue to operate and provide the services that we do.
And I just want to ask a question about the mobile home manufactured housing. Will it still have kind of a natural environment around it?
That's our hope. You certainly, one of the beauties of Dowling Park is the natural environment and the setting that we have here. We love the trees, and we love some of the aesthetics that we have, and so we certainly don't want to do anything to take away from that. That's why we're all here, and we're not looking at massive growth. Again, I think as we recognize the importance of that sense of community, that we don't want to expand too quickly to jeopardize that as well.
Craig, I've heard over and over from members during the pandemic that they couldn't have been in a better place than they are. So thank you for all you and the staff have done to create a safe environment.
It's there was no roadmap for how we handled the pandemic. That's right. We have a wonderful staff. We have a very dedicated staff of individuals that were too concerned about making sure that we limited the risk as best that we can. Obviously, when you're dealing with a community like this, every decision is not going to be recognized as positive by every individual. But yet I feel that we did what was necessary to have our best shot at providing the protections that people really wanted. And there was a lot of unknowns during that time. And so we just are thankful to God for his protections, and also the dedication and the seriousness that the staff gave to making sure that we were doing what was necessary. So it was our privilege.
Well, and our benefit. Thank you. Would you each tell me, do you have a hobby or things you like to do?
I love to read, so I spend a lot of my time reading, and I love to scrapbook. And so as the kids were growing up, I made scrapbooks for all of the children, and so I'm still working to finish Lindsay's scrapbook. So I'm in her high school year, so I'm almost done, and hoping to get that out this summer to continue working on it.
Well, let's see, my son was about 26 when I moved here, And while I was here, I finished his baby or his childhood scrapbook. So you're doing well.
Yeah, I'm saying I
I
have
was a
boys.
little slow,
Their books are done from when they were born to high school, and like I said, Lindsay. But the reason I have continued to work on that is that was kind of a girls' weekend for myself and my mom and my sisters. So every year in February, I would fly up to Minnesota, where near where one of my sisters live, and we would have a girls' weekend, and we would spend all weekend scrapbooking together. And so I was able to finish and do a lot of that. But the past 2 years, we haven't been able to get together. Or one year we got together and just decided not to bring our scrapbook stuff because they were all finished with, a lot of theirs. But
So are you going to start grandma books?
I don't know. I thought about it, so I might do that.
Craig, what about you?
I love the outdoors. I'm not good at it, but I enjoy golfing. I too like to read from time to time. I enjoy just being out in the yard and doing things. One of the things we enjoy doing together is camping, and we look forward to doing more of that down the road, but it was something that we introduced our children to and enjoyed those family vacations camping. I always said, in a hotel room, either you're out doing something or you're just sitting on a bed watching TV, but when you're camping, you give them a fire and some sticks and they're happy for hours. And again, just enjoying the outdoors. So we do a lot of camping, enjoy that. We've just recently in the last year or so, purchased kayaks, and so we're enjoying getting out and kayaking. The river is a wonderful asset that we have, and
Yes, it
to
is.
be able to get out and enjoy that. Again, from our youth, going back to that, one of the highlights of my youth was through Camp Swanee. We used to do more overnight trips, canoeing. A group of us went for 10 days, went 190 miles down the Swanee River. We started up at State Road 6, which is just outside of the swamp, the Okefenokee Swamp, and traveled all the way down to Manatee Springs, which is 18 miles from the mouth, and took 10 days to do it. Just saw all aspects of the river, the diversity of the river, the springs, the natural beauty. Just a wonderful experience, and now to get out with a kayak and enjoy it again. It's so peaceful to be out in such a beautiful area. Encourage all to get out as they're able to.
Are there things on your bucket list?
We were talking about that. I don't know that I have a huge bucket list. Really enjoy traveling, and there's so much to see in the U.S. as we retire. That's one of the things we'd like to do is travel more. Overseas, if I was able to go somewhere, I'd probably choose Australia and New Zealand. That area, I hear great things about it. But I don't have any desire to jump out of an airplane and parachute or to hang glide or any of those. I'll leave that to the more adventurous.
What about you, Vicky?
Yeah, we were talking about that recently. I've been to pretty much the 48 continental United States, but I've never been to Alaska and Hawaii, so I would kind of like to do that at some point, to visit both of those states. But I don't have a real desire to go overseas. If the opportunity comes up, that would be fine, but really I think just doing the traveling and seeing more of the United States and just
It's a phenomenal place.
and just
Natural beauty and
right.
Yeah. You did mention you wanted to go to the Rose Parade.
Oh yes, I forgot.
That's always been on my bucket
Yeah,
list.
I thought that, you watch it on TV, the Rose Bowl Parade, and I just know that those floats with all those flowers and seeds and everything they use just cannot probably be portrayed on the television. So it would be fun to go and watch that.
And
to see.
some of the tour companies do that and arrange for you to be a volunteer putting those floats together.
No, I think they stay up all night though. They
For
do
days.
24-hour shifts.
See,
Yeah.
I encourage that bucket list because then it'd be neat to go to the Rose Bowl
Yeah, I was
as
going to
well.
say, he probably wants to go to the football game. I just want to go to the parade.
And you guys I know Craig likes FSU. Vicky, do you have a
It
other
was funny
caution?
because college sports are not real big in the North. I mean, it was more your national, your Cubs, your Bears, that kind of thing, your Green Bay Packers. But so college football just wasn't a big thing. And of course, we didn't go to a big university where we even would back any college games. So when I moved here, I thought, what is all the fuss, between, Seminoles, Gators, or Hurricanes and everything. But because I've lived here now for over 30 years, yes, we're big Seminole fans, and we have had season tickets to the Seminole games. Even when we were in Tampa, we would come up for the weekends and go to the Seminole games. So yes, I guess you could call me a Seminole. And of course, Timothy, his undergraduate work, our second child, he went to Florida State, and still is in the med school with Florida State as well. But yeah, we're pretty much Seminole fans.
I'm concerned about my tickets going forward, because the last 6 years I've gotten her to go to the games because she got to see Timothy there. He'd stop over and see us during the football games, and since he's no longer there, I've got to find another hook to get her to make sure we continue to go.
I know both of you talked about growing up in Christian homes. Based on your lives growing up, and your current experiences, what advice would you give a young person today?
I tell you, my life verse is one I think that was, instilled in me, and I think is so true, is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Have that faith, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. All your ways acknowledge Him, and He'll direct your path. And I think certainly it's easy to try to go on your own, and over and over and over again, we're slow learners. That when we finally give up and say, Lord, lead and guide and direct, and He does, and that cannot be overstated. Is that don't try to do it on your own. Trust in the Lord, and give your all to Him, and He'll direct your path. He'll make your path straight, and things will work out. We were just talking with one of our children recently. Just don't feel you have to have everything today as well. I received some advice from a resident here that really hit home with me. It was, don't feel you have to start off where your parents ended up. And we didn't, and we certainly had challenges. Both of our apartments in Tampa were not in the best areas, and we struggled quite a bit, and learned to do without in a lot of ways. And but yet, our faith was still there, and we trusted in God, and as He was faithful and supplied our needs, and has been there, that we know we can count on Him.
Vicky, anything else you want to add?
No, we've just always, tried to instill a love for Christ with our own children, and with being an example to them, and just like Craig said, leaning on the Lord and making sure you go to prayer and look for His leading and guiding in your life.
Is there anything you'd like to tell our viewers that we haven't talked about?
This is a special place, as I said, and it's great when you get to really know people and have that sense of community, and the village can be about the facilities, the services, all the stuff that is here as you're looking at it, but really it's about being a sense of ministry, being here for a greater purpose of expressing Christ's love, and that sense of community as neighbor looks after neighbor, and you hear it so often of, especially in times of need, how people come together and support one another, and that's what the village truly is all about, is that true sense of ministry and being here, being the family of God and the love of Christ that is so evident here. It's something you really have to feel and be a part of to understand. But just appreciate those who are here, and love being part of this big family.
Well, thank you both so much for visiting with us today, and that's one of the reasons we do Front Porch Conversations, is to introduce people to each other through this medium. And we have done a lot of interviews now, and I want to tell y'all that you're the 100th interview that we've done.
Oh, that's great.
Conversation.
That's
And it wouldn't
great.
happen without the people behind the cameras here, and that's Tom and Don and Carol. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, and for all of you for, again, that's another big part of the village is volunteerism and everyone contributing to make the village successful in all it does. Thank you. You've enjoyed it. It's been a lot of fun.
You can tell people you weren't tortured or anything.
Well, I may embellish a little.
Thanks so much for tuning into this conversation here at Advent Christian Village, and I hope you'll tune in again and watch future episodes.